Hey everybody, welcome, welcome to Hidden Horror. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate that. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Hidden Horror. How are you guys doing? How are you feeling? I want to know what's going on with you. So today I'm here. I have two videos, and they are about Cyray. Now, Cyray was initially introduced into the case, I would say about last year in 2024. He testified in court, and it was regarding, of course, the records that he feels he has not received relating to the cell phone of Bryan Kohberger, the AT&T phone records. So last year, I did not want to talk about this. I did not want to deal with this. I felt the prosecution would eventually provide those records because customarily they would have requested those records back in the end of 2022 when the murders occurred. Um, I believe that they had the records and they should have the records. Um, I don't know why they have not provided them to the defense, but these two videos, they're going to talk about what is really missing information, but this missing information could have a great impact on the trajectory of this case. Um, Cyray, he is working on behalf of the defense, but he has never worked for the defense in the past. He's always been a witness for the prosecution, which to me, it says a lot. I was hoping that this issue, when Cyray testified about 10 months ago, was about May of 2024. I was hoping this would just go away, be resolved, but it hasn't. Um, Cyray has provided two affidavits. This first one that we're going to talk about, it relates to the AT&T Timing Advance Records. And then my next video I'm going to talk about, it will be separate. But there's more missing information, incomplete information. So we'll talk about that separate. I just want to focus one at a time. But I want to start off initially talking a little bit about Cyray, his background. Why is he an important witness, not just for the defense, but in his past career? He was in law enforcement, right? He kind of started his business from probably his experience and what he could provide, which is the system that he has set up. He had a company that he later sold, but they were able to get these records, right? So I want to do a little background information on Cyray a little bit, and then we will go. If you check out the Hidden Horror Facebook page, I have provided this affidavit so that you can view the entirety of the affidavit later. Okay, so let's get started. Let me show you a picture of Cyray because we're going to be focusing on him and the work that he has done. So the picture is so small. Let me see if I can get something a little bit bigger. My apologies. Okay, that picture will do. So my article is coming from newsweek.com. It's dated April 18th, 2024, and it's titled, "Who is Cyray? Bryan Kohberger turns to retired officer to prove alibi." And the writer is senior crime and courts reporter. Okay. Let me just say this also. all of this work that Syray is doing, it relates to Bryan Kohberger's alibi. The significance um, of the work is to demonstrate what Mr. Kohberger can't really prove, which is his location, his driving around, um, his allegedly stargazing, um, that information there that he provided to the court when he said that that's what he was doing the night of, unfortunately, the Idaho 4 murders into starting Saturday, November 12th, 2022, into Sunday, November 13th, 2022. He was allegedly driving around. And again, I did probably two videos on the alibi, just going over, um, would he have stopped? Would he have gotten gas, got water? Would he have met with friends? Would he have went to the ATM, purchased food. I was giving all kind of ideas to help solidify this alibi to demonstrate, where he was, and could he demonstrate in a way he doesn't have someone that can testify that they were with him. So he was out, he was driving, he was alone, allegedly. So I was thinking of all kind of ways to demonstrate what he was doing, but Syray being an expert in mapping and being able to show through the cell phone data where he would be able to demonstrate um, his pattern, his driving. Okay, so that's why this is important, because technically, in the state of Idaho, you have to provide an alibi. It has to be able to be verified. Um, you have to give this information, which is going to show specifically where you were, who you with, and provide records, phone numbers, so that the prosecution can confirm it. Well, Bryan Kohberger doesn't have the ability to do that because he was out and he was alone, and he can kind of give them a general idea of where he was driving and things like that. But the cell phone data will really demonstrate that he was not near the 1122 King Road house or in that area at the time or time frame of what they're allegedly saying is a time frame where the four students were murdered. So that is why this is significant. It's important. I really hope that when he testified last year in front of Judge Judge that the prosecution would provide this missing information, these records. The FBI would work to fill in these gaps with all these questions, because again, this is either going to strengthen the evidence for the prosecution, who is alleging that there was a certain path that he was on, that he was at this house. He went into this house. He was there for a certain amount of time, which they're alleging is about between 7 to 8 minutes and all of that. Or it's going to prove or document or provide evidence that shows no, Bryan Kohberger was not at the 1122 King Road house, not just the car, but him physically with the phone, okay, with the cell phone data. So that's why it's important. And again, I kind of hope this would be resolved behind the scenes. That's why I didn't want to address it. I didn't want to talk about Syray. Um, we're laughing almost a year. We're 10 months later, and we still don't know. We still don't have any decision. We don't have this information, this evidence, these records, and that's a problem. Where are the records? What did you utilize to get the information? Where are the record stores? Where did you place this information that's missing all this time, right? So anyway, let's start with the article, and it is by Sean O'Driscoll. I see the writer now, Sean O'Driscoll. Okay, let's go. Bryan Kohberger's defense team has hired a cell phone expert in an attempt to show that he couldn't have murdered four Idaho college students. Syray, founder of ZX, or Zex Corporation, is a former police officer who specializes in analyzing cell phone data in criminal cases. He has been called as a witness in numerous criminal trials in an attempt to show that a person's cell phone could have been in a particular area. His analysis relies on the pings that a cell phone sends to a nearby cell phone tower, even when the user is not making a phone call. Kohberger, 29, has been charged with 4 counts of first degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary in connection with the stabbings of Kaylee Goncalves, she was 21, Madison Mogan, she was 21, Zaina Kernardle, who was 20, and Ethan Chapin, 20. The bodies of the 4 University of Idaho students were found in an off campus residence on November 13th, 2022. Kohberger has maintained his innocence in the case, previously standing silent during his arraignment. Judge John Judge, who is overseeing the case, entered not guilty pleas for each of the charges against him in response. Newsweek sought email comment on Thursday from Ray and Kohberger's attorney. Well, we know there's a gag order, so they can't respond to the media requests. Let's continue. A defense document filed in court on Wednesday states that Kohberger told his defense team he was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, as he often did, to hike and run and or see the moon and stars. He drove throughout the area south of Pullman, Washington, went west of Moscow, Idaho, including Wawa Way Park. My apologies if I said that incorrectly. The document adds that Ray will testify that cell tower records show that Kohberger's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho, on November 13th, 2022. That Bryan Kohberger's mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow Pullman Highway in the early morning hours of November 13th, and thus could not be the vehicle captured on video along the Moscow Pullman Highway near Floyd's cannabis shop. According to a profile on Mary Talk, a news site that specializes in new government technology contracts, Ray spent 20 years in law enforcement, where he spent time as a SWAT operator, homicide sergeant, and directing fugitive missions. Some of his work has been featured on several episodes of 48 Hours, 2020, the Discovery Channel, and Dateline, showcasing his investigative and technological expertise. Spent time in Afghanistan as a field advisor for an undercover team targeting improvised explosive device sales, IEDs, it adds. He set up Zex in 2014, and it has worked in both radio frequency and cell phone data. The company was purchased by LexisNexis in 2021. His accomplishments include engineering RF drone detection sensors used by the NFL at the 2015 Super Bowl, and engineering RF tracking and security technology for law enforcement and military applications, the Mary Talk profile states. He lives with his family on a ranch in southern Arizona and co-hosts a true crime podcast called Social Light Crime Club. Attorney Mercy Wright noted his expertise in a social media post on Thursday. Writing on X, formerly Twitter, she noted that one judge repeatedly stated a ruling that Ray makes a compelling witness. In January of 2021, Ray testified as a prosecution witness in the case of Danielle Wood, who was on trial for the May 2nd, 2018 murder of her ex-boyfriend, Matt Lafreniere, with whom she was locked in a child custody battle. Ray was hired to show the movements of a phone that prosecutors say was used in the murder. Former Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks Warden Mike Fagili, who was employed by Ray, also gave evidence according to a report in the Clark Fork Valley Press newspaper in Montana. Wood was convicted later that month, and in March of 2021, she was jailed for 100 years without the possibility of parole. Okay, sorry, that was a long video. Let me stop sharing for a minute. Whew, that was a long article, and I still have two more. Okay, so my apologies if this is going to take a long time, but I'm trying to lay the foundation of why it's important, why Cy Ray's testimony is important. It's really because of his experience. His experience is vast. He's had a career spanning decades now. He's respected. He's probably peer reviewed. Um, and he sounds like he is at the top in his industry, okay, in his field. So he has the knowledge, okay, to provide this affidavit that we're going to go over. So, okay, now we're going to move on. We have two more articles. The next article is on kxly.com. It's dated May 30th, 2024. It's by Melissa Luck, and it's titled, I Need to Know Where They Are. Kohberger defense says police haven't turned over videos, cell phone tower information in U of I murder case. So let's go. Moscow, Idaho. Attorneys for suspected killer Bryan Kohberger called witnesses Thursday, hoping to compel more evidence be turned over in the case that supports his alibi. Kohberger is accused of killing Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Zaina Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin at a home near the University of Idaho campus in November of 2022. He faces the death penalty if convicted, but no trial date has yet been set. Attorneys on both sides have called the case complex and are now working through thousands of pieces of evidence as they prepare for trial. Kohberger's attorneys have previously said he didn't commit the crimes that night. They say he was out driving and stargazing the night of the murders, which we already know is not the format of an alibi that they expect. Okay, we've already discussed that. At a morning hearing Thursday, defense called two witnesses to testify about surveillance videos and cell phone records. The defense first called Brett Payne to the stand. He's employed by the Moscow Police Department and served as the case agent. So he is the person that is leading the case, as we already know per, I would say, when he did his affidavit. He took the lead on the case. In the affidavit, he was the lead detective. So he's going to be the one that is managing and handling the case. Okay. The defense focus is questioning on surveillance cameras collected from homes and businesses as police look for a suspect and try to track a white Elantra believed to be the suspect's car. Now I'm just going to insert this little piece. I have said to you before, I've did some Google searches prior to them taking the house down. They they had all kind of white cars in that neighborhood. They had white Elantras at the house, near the house. Um, for them to not believe that it could have been multiple four-door white similar vehicles, it's just beyond me. They have come out now because it's been years, and they have revealed several people own white Elantras in this community. Okay, so I'm just saying. Okay. Let's continue. Defense attorney Ann Taylor indicated that some of those videos have not yet been turned over. I need to know where they are, Taylor said. Now remember, these murders happened allegedly between Saturday, November 12th into Sunday, November 13th, the late to early morning hours between that Saturday and Sunday, right? We fast forward in this article, this is May of 2024, and they still do not have the evidence. They don't have the videos. They have not been provided to them. Um, if there was a speedy trial, I don't know what would happen, because it's at this time you're lapping like a year and a half, and you still don't have evidence. And you're fighting for evidence. You're fighting for accountability. You're fighting for that chain of custody, which shows you collected evidence, but now you don't have it. Um, So it's a strange thing, but let's continue on. Payne referred Taylor to the evidence custodian in the case, then said a lot of video surveillance has been collected in the case. Well, the difference is a lot of evidence has been collected, a lot of video evidence has been collected, but that's where it's logged, it's marked, it's identified, it's separated. She's only wanting the evidence that you're referring to in your PCA. Okay, I won't even go there. Let's continue. Thousands, Taylor acts easily, responded Payne. Taylor focused on US 95 heading south out of Moscow and implied that video taken in that area has not been turned over. Prosecutors asked Payne if all the relevant evidence had been turned over for discovery. He said it has, but Taylor pushed back. As the lead agent and the lead department, is there some kind of inventory that will help me understand what you have and why you don't have relevant time frames? Taylor asked. So she's asking for the organization piece. How did you organize this information? How did you organize the videos? Have you put them in a category? Have you put them in by time? Have you put them in by location? What is the system so I can get to what I need? Don't refer me to the inventory specialist. You are the lead, you're leading this investigation. You should know, you should be aware. Okay, Payne again referred Taylor to the evidence custodian in the case. When questioned by the state, Payne said they don't believe Kohberger necessarily left Moscow heading south on US 95. Payne said they were not able to obtain surveillance video from that area. Are you testifying Mr. Kohberger did not use US 95 south of Moscow? Taylor asked. Payne indicated there were several routes he could have taken and that police are not sure which route he would have taken. Okay, just continue. After Payne stepped down, the defense called Cy Ray, a consultant who is an expert in geological and analysis of cell phone records. I didn't even know what the title of Cy Ray, so I didn't give him a title because I didn't want to put him in a box. I don't even know what he, titles himself, if he feels he's an expert in a certain category, so I didn't give him a title. I just said Cy Ray. So my apologies, Mr. Ray, if I had not properly titled you as an expert. I just was not sure exactly, so I just didn't want to make that mistake. But my apologies, okay? Ray told the court Thursday he's been called as an expert witness many times, but this is the first time he's testified as a defense witness. He said his role in the case is to analyze all the geological data, focusing first on Kohberger's device. Ray said he focuses not on the metadata on the phone, who someone called, their social media activity, etc., but where the phone was located and how it traveled there. In a previous court filing, defense attorney said Mr. Kohberger intends to offer testimony of Ray to show that Bryan Kohberger's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho on November 13, 2022, that Bryan Kohberger's mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow Pullman Highway in the early morning hours of November 13, and thus could not be the vehicle captured on video along the Moscow Pullman Highway near Floyd's cannabis shop. Okay. Floyd's is located just across the border in Washington along Highway 270 between Moscow and Pullman. Kohberger was a student at Washington State University in Pullman at the time of the murders. Ray told the court Thursday that he believes 2 to 3% of the cell phone data in the case has not been turned over. It could be extremely impactful to either side, Ray said, of the missing information. He did, however, say what he has seen so far is exculpatory, which means it benefits Kohberger. So let's just pause here. From what Ray is saying, from what he has reviewed, is pretty much indicating to him that Mr. Kohberger was not in the area of 1122 King Road during the alleged time frame. I'm going to say alleged because we just don't know. We don't have a way to really pin down the time of the murders. But from what he has seen, what he has reviewed, Bryan Kohberger is not in this area to have even committed the crime, to his knowledge, with the information he's aware of. But he's saying that also it's about 2 to 3% missing information, and that would be helpful to Phil to make a determination, more of a determination, so he can be confident in what he's saying once he has all the information, all the records, right? Okay, let's continue. After the morning's witnesses, the defense made an argument asking the judge to compel prosecutors to turn over federal grand jury subpoenas used in the case. They want to establish a timeline of the investigation and mentioned concerns about alternate suspects, a phrase on which they did not elaborate. Timing is critical related to the investigation, defense attorneys argued. The defense says some of the subpoenas are from before Kohberger was arrested and others were issued much later. While attorneys have the results of the subpoenas, the defense wants the actual subpoena themselves to determine what investigators were going for. Prosecutors say they don't have those grand jury subpoenas because those came from a federal agency and they aren't typically handed over. So even if you don't have them, can you obtain them? That would be the better question. If they didn't come from you, they came from a federal agency, are you able to have those records provided to the defense? That should be the better question. Attorneys say there were 71 grand jury subpoenas issued and that attorneys can infer what the subpoenas were requesting based on what records were turned over. She said they can infer. One second. My apologies. I have to pull it up again. You may be overestimating my power, Judge John Judge said, of his ability to compel the prosecution to turn over the grand jury subpoenas. They use a subpoena to give one of the most critical pieces of evidence in this case, the defense said, but did not want to share in open court what that evidence is. The defense said it is evidence that is discussed in the probable cause affidavit used to arrest Kohberger. A second hearing was scheduled for later Thursday, but that hearing is not open to the public or cameras. At that hearing, 2 witnesses are expected to testify about the IgG, the investigative genetic genealogy used in the case. Investigators uploaded DNA found on a knife sheath left at the crime scene and say they narrowed it on Kohberger through a public genealogy website. The defense has been critical of that process, saying they want to see more evidence of how that process was done. Prosecutors have argued that because they have a DNA match to Kohberger through a cheek swab collected at the time of his arrest, the IgG evidence is not crucial to their case. Okay, let's move on to the last article. This article is by NBCnews.com. It's titled Cell Phone Expert Testifies Missing Data Benefits University of Idaho Murder Suspect. So let's bring Cyril back up. Okay, because we're back talking about him again. Okay. What have we got? This article is by Eric Ortiz and it was written May 30th, 2024. A cell phone analyst suggested at a pretrial hearing Thursday that he has been stymied by law enforcement's disorganized data collection and record keeping in the case against Bryan Kohberger, the graduate student accused in the fatal stabbings of 4 Idaho college students. Cyril, whom Kohberger's defense team plans to call as an expert witness at trial, said his review of the evidence provided by the FBI and police so far shows not all of the cell phone data extracted from Kohberger's phone around the time of the murders in 2022 was mapped. He further testified that it's crucial that he receive all of the AT&T source data and related information for him to verify, given that prosecutors in Latah County are pinning Kohberger to the location of the killings in part by his cell phone use and cell tower records. It is a terrible practice to justify probable cause with these very detailed call detail records that give breadcrumb-like trails for individuals and then not map it, Ray said. I think overall what he's saying is you're using these cell phone records through the cell tower records to place Mr. Kohberger at 1122 King Road, but you don't have all the records. At least you haven't provided me, you haven't provided the defense with all the records. And it's like, because you didn't map it, it's like you're taking small pieces and just putting them together. But that's not the best way to show probable cause, okay, in the case. Because of the piecemealing of the data, because of the missing data, because of the data I'm reviewing that is incredibly inaccurate, everything that is missing is absolutely in benefit of the defense right now, Ray testified, adding, there are other reports that are missing that I can't tell you are benefiting of Mr. Kohberger or the state. He added that it's unclear why certain data is unavailable. Is this human error? Is this accidental? Is it intentional? Really, what it comes down to, and this is why I didn't want to talk about this. This is why I didn't want to address it, but it's hitting a fever pitch for me. The records, they're not complete, they're inaccurate. You have missing information. And you can't make accurate statements. You can't demonstrate in a complete form without this information, right? And where is the documents? Where are these records? It's very frustrating. What he has seen so far, he said, appears to be exculpatory to Kohberger. And that's scary. It's really scary because all of this time, the public, we have been lied to so much in this case in every area. We've been lied to with the car. The car was said to be a Tesla. They said that the car was a 2011 to 2013. That was not true. Then we find out it's all kind of Elantras in this area. We find out that the police was in a similar four-door car. It appeared to be silver. I don't know if it was white. It could be white. But that was the night of the murders. We have that car on video. We were live. We were thinking that the murders happened at 3 a.m. and then it was changed to this 4:30 a.m. time, which I never believed that. I always believed that Kaylee and Maddie, when their phone stopped any more activity at 2:52 a.m., I believe the murders started for them at that time. And then because I can never figure out where was Zaina and Ethan? Where were Zaina and Ethan after 8 p.m. throughout the night? I had seen videos of them going into a property that was, I believe, between midnight and 12:30 a.m. I've seen videos of all kind of stuff happening to Ethan and Zaina in the dark outside. But I don't choose to bring that to the platform because I just don't know if it's accurate. But I don't believe, and I haven't believed, that Zaina and Ethan were necessarily killed at 1122 King Road. And I don't think that Zaina and Ethan were killed at the same time as Kaylee and Maddie. I believe that Ethan and Zaina were killed earlier in the evening, not at that 2:52 a.m. time. I think they were killed first. But I don't know because I'm told all kind of things. I'm told about DoorDash for Zaina. That's if Zaina ordered that DoorDash. Anyone can order something on another person's phone. I don't know. But it's just a lot to consider, a lot to think about. And now again, we have in the mix. We have this missing information, this vital information, incomplete information, inaccurate information. It's just like, how can we trust law enforcement? They had a press conference. They tell us that they never said that the two roommates, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, were witnesses. But then when we read the affidavit of Brett Payne, clearly they were allegedly in the house. And, they heard things, they saw things, which makes them witnesses. It's like we've been lied to so much. Is misdirection, is being misguided. They came right out in court and said Bryan Kohberger wasn't stalking the girls. But then for the longest, that was an idea that was left out there to grow and develop, and that he was some kind of stalker. And, he watched the girls, and that Kaylee had been reported that she had a stalker. And it's just like this case, it's really been, it's just been, it is really hard to get this case back on track because of all of the misinformation. Where is the truth in it all? Where is the truth? It's like we have the mainstream media and the ideas that are pushed out through mainstream media, and then we have a whole nother secondary set of ideas, of information that comes out, of witnesses that come out. We're told in the PCA that Dylan Mortensen was in a frozen shock phase, but then I find out through witnesses that say they saw Dylan Mortensen outside between like 8:15, 8:30 a.m. with friends in the backyard. And you wouldn't even think a murder happened that morning or that day, or that a murder, they were all deceased. Ethan, Zaina, Maddie, and Kaylee, all deceased in the house. They were just outside together, a group of friends. It's just very frustrating, but let me get back on track. Let's see. Earlier in Thursday's hearing, a lead investigator with the Moscow Police Department testified that thousands of hours of video were collected in relation to a Hyundai Elantra that prosecutors say Kohberger was driving when he left his apartment in Washington State, 9.5 miles from where the murders took place in Moscow, Idaho. Thursday's testimony was part of an ongoing attempt by the defense to ask the judge to compel prosecutors to turn over certain evidence in the discovery phase. DNA experts were expected to be called during a later hearing closed to the public. Prosecutors have argued that they aren't purposely withholding information. Well, what what do you call it then? This much time has we're in 2025 now. More than 2 years. And they still do not have this information, these records. They have a hearing set next week on all of this missing evidence, missing information. The slow pace of the pretrial hearings and the discussion hanging over such a high profile case have only delayed the trial and pushed a trial date back to spring or summer 2025, frustrating families of the victims who say their ability to heal has been impeded. Documents filed Friday also show that a hearing on whether to move the trial out of Latah County, initially scheduled for late June, has been further delayed to August 29. As I told you before when we talked about the change of venue, Judge could have just changed the venue because we know that Latah County would not have been able to support such a huge trial. All of these witnesses, all of the media coming in, and that it was better to move the trial out of Latah County, okay? For the families, for the victims' families, I've said this before, and I don't want to feel this way, but in the beginning, I used to have in my videos where I would say, I don't want this case to end up like a John Bonet case or some of the other cases that just did not get solved. And because there's been so many mistakes, so much misdirection, just outright lies, all of this time. For example, when they were wondering, what did the FBI do? What work did the FBI do? Did they use an unauthorized lab, a genealogy company, to, try to search for this DNA? And they kept putting it out, and now it's come out. Yes, they used an unauthorized facility. It's like, how many times are we going to be blindsided? Just outright lied to. None of the main key points in this case have been supported, from the blood on the sheath to what about the blood that's on the handrail? Why didn't you go and test that DNA? Why didn't you find out who DNA that belongs to? It's an unknown male. What about the mixture of 3 DNAs under Maddie Moken's fingernail clippings? What about those 3 male sources of DNA? What about the DNA that was allegedly found in the glove, the blood? That's another male DNA. Who does all of this DNA belong to? At the crime scene, in blood. And then you want me to believe that this touch DNA on the sheath is solid gold, but we don't go and look into all these other sources of DNA? There's something wrong with how this case was handled from the onset. As I have always said, and I did a whole series on how I felt the Idaho 4 could have been killed by law enforcement, mainly looking at the case through the eyes of possibly a stalker obsession. And then there's all of the ulterior other ideas, other thoughts about why these students, particularly, could have been killed. I have seen a lot of alternative ideas, with allegedly that this was a drug house, that drugs were being sold there, used there, and that this could have been a targeted hit because allegedly there was some drugs that were flushed down the toilet. And there was a threat that, hey, these people are going to get you. They're going to make you pay for this. I don't know. I wasn't there. I've seen all kind of videos. I know that uh, these two students, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, they were not sleeping during this time. I don't even know if they were in the house during the time of the murders or after the murders or before the murders, but I know they weren't sleeping because now the text history have come out. The activity on their phones, Bethany Funk, Dylan Morrison phones have come out. And they weren't sleep. They were up. They were up. They were making phone calls. They were texting. They were on social um, apps. They were sending anonymous things on those apps. They were taking pictures. I mean, me personally, I was not surprised when it was revealed through the history of the phone that pictures had been taken, because in my mind that's something that people would do. They would take pictures, they would take video, they would tell people, where were the parents when they were able to get a hold of mom or dad? Why didn't they call 911? Why didn't they tell the girls to call 911? It's really, really messed up. This case is just, it's messed up bad. And it started from the beginning. It started from the inception. Brett Payne's the lead investigator. How do you come on the scene 4 hours after the 911 call? How does Kathy Mabbitt, the coroner, how does she come on the scene 5.5 hours later? It's no urgency. And even the 911 call didn't make any sense. Didn't make any sense. There was no mention of blood, a stabbing, or anything. These students, they had been dead. Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Zayna, they had been dead for hours. How do you get an accurate time of death? They've been set out dead 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours. I believe that time of death again is really undetermined for Zayna and Ethan, because we really don't know when they actually were killed and where they were actually killed. We just don't know. And I think we have evidence. We have video of Kaylee and Maddie being alive because we have that grub truck video. And we know what time they arrived at the house. And their arrival may have been caught on camera. But we know just up until about 2 a.m. Did Kaylee and Maddie ever even make it inside the house? Were they attacked outside? It's a lot to think about. Because now Murphy, Kaylee's dog is popping in my mind, didn't have any blood on him. It just seems that he would have been barking nonstop, being put into a room or being found in a room later. Where was he at all those hours? Why wasn't he barking? Anyway, let's continue on. The family of Kaylee Goncalves, one of the murder students, mocked Thursday's hearings as business as usual. The defense claiming they haven't received all the evidence in the case, and the prosecution stating, "We can't give it if we don't have it," the Goncalves family said in a statement. So, for people that are concerned about this case, if you know that there were other sources of evidence where blood was left and there's male unknown DNA, would you want that evidence processed? Would you want to know who that DNA belonged to? Wouldn't you want to know that? Wouldn't you want to know that the police was able to at least try to process that evidence, try to get a match for that DNA? Wouldn't you want every person involved in the death, I can't even call this a death. I'm going to call it the murder, because this was savage. This was brutal. This was violent. A stabbing is vicious. It's deadly. I'm going to continue on because I don't want to even really get upset. Okay. The hearings have become a wild west of statements, witnesses' issues, hand-holding of the attorneys, and excuses for a continued delay, they said, adding that the victims' families want justice, but just as importantly, we want the case to move forward. Yes, but you want the right people, the right person, the right killer or killers, and you want them all. You want these people to be held accountable, responsible, and receive justice. Not just anybody. Let the evidence lead you. Because you know what? And this is in particular to the Gonclave's family. Look at that picture of Bryan Kohberger, that selfie picture, the morning, November 13th, 2022. Let me tell you, let me speak to you, okay? Cyree can attest to this because he was a law enforcement officer for many, many years. He came upon scenes of violence, scenes of murder, scenes of stabbings, hangings, suicide. When you have victims that have defensive wounds, they have fought, they have battled, they have scratched, kicked, bit their attacker. And when you look at that selfie of Bryan Kohberger, it's never going to change my view that he did not have any defensive wounds. Let me show you. I want you to understand. Let me see. We're going to look at the selfie. Get his face, his ears, his neck, his hand. Let's look at a picture when Bryan Kohberger was arrested. Because I looked at this, and people in law enforcement, look at his neck. Look around his forehead. Look at his arms. Look at his hands. He doesn't have any defensive wounds. There would be scratches, tears, abrasions, cuts. You're fighting. You're fighting. There's a battle. You don't have a scratch on you. Come on now. Not a scratch. Let the people tell you the truth. Let them tell you the truth. In a battle, you're attacking multiple people. You're stabbing them. They haven't kicked you. They haven't punched you. They haven't bit you. They haven't scratched you anywhere. Okay. Okay. 3 of the victims, Gonclave's 21, Madison Mogan, 21, and Zeta Kernodle, 20, lived in an apartment house near the University of Idaho where they were students. Kernodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, 20, had been staying over and was also killed early November 13, 2022. In an affidavit following Kohberger's arrest, weeks after the killings, prosecutors said he was linked to the scene through male DNA discovered on a knife sheath left at the victim's apartment house. Investigators also said his cell phone use and video surveillance connected him to the crime. Kohberger's alibi defense maintains that he would go for nighttime drives and that they only increased during the school year. Nighttime drives. Come on. Let me share my screen so we can go over Cyray's affidavit. Let's do that now. Okay, so if you haven't checked out the Hidden Horror Facebook page, this is what it looks like. Please become my friend on Facebook. Share the content, like the page. It helps me to get more of my videos out. So please do that. Okay, so Judge Hippler, he has decided not to allow Cyray to come and testify in court. He has decided that if any questions arise, that they will have Cyray available to answer any questions or concerns remotely. So they will be able to tap in, to Mr. Cyray if needed. Because really, he testified about 10 months ago at the end of May 2024. So they have that testimony, and then Mr. Cyray has provided this affidavit. And it's basically in support of the objection about the motion in Liminie as it relates to the AT&T Timing Records. Okay, so let's check that out. I'm going to enlarge. Okay, make it a little bit bigger. So this is actually the end. Let's go. Go back to the beginning. And I will try to enlarge that. So we're going to read it. So we're not going to read every part. It's just that takes up a lot of time. So I'm just going to go through it a little bit. But it says, and this is Cyray's affidavit, okay, relating to the AT&T timing data records, okay. He says that I became a certified police officer in the state of Arizona in 1996. So this is 2025. You're looking at 29 years, okay, of some type of law enforcement activity, work, okay, responsibilities. This is someone that has a lot of experience. He's going to have experience on crime scenes. He's going to have experience with investigations. He's going to have the knowledge with these records, documents, how inventory is handled, stored, how crime scenes are pressed. He's going to have a wealth of experience into this case. And again, this is the first time he's ever assisted the defense. That's very interesting, right? Very interesting, but let's continue. So let's go to the next page. He just said on the bottom, he said, I worked with my first set of AT&T records in 1997. I spent nearly 20 years in law enforcement in the primary role of a detective. He have worked hundreds of death investigations. He's consulted on over 1,000 homicide cases in his career. He says as the role of detective, he gained extensive experience utilizing call detail records and exploiting cellular networks for investigative related purposes. In 2014, he retired from law enforcement and started a business called Zex that created software for law enforcement to map and analyze call detail records. As part of that business, he maintained software that supported every known call detail record provided to law enforcement in the United States. Um, his system has analyzed over 3 billion calls from call detail records provided by cellular phone companies in the United States. He ended up selling the business in 2021. And as a result, he's been working directly with engineers at the cellular phone companies for over 2 decades. He's very familiar with the type of data that gets maintained um, and that's provided to law enforcement. Okay, so let's keep going. He has been a instructor, um, utilizing his background, and he's helped law enforcement with these different types of criminal investigations. Um, he has attending courses, he's done presentations. Um, he says he created the first geolocation cellular investigation subject matter expert course, and he's offered that to state and law enforcement officers. He's established himself and he has best practices within the discipline of call detail record analysis. He's had over 1,000 law enforcement agencies attend those courses. He's just done a lot. He's worked with the FBI, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals, DEA, and DHS, all these federal agencies, right? And through his work, he regularly consults with the prosecution on investigations around the world. He's been recognized for this work as an expert in this field. He's testified on the matter more than 100 times throughout the United States in federal and state courts. Um, he's always worked on behalf of the prosecution. Um, let's keep going. He's worked extensively with time and advance data from the cellular phone network providers over the past 15 years. He's testified to the use of this time advance data numerous times. He's created and taught hundreds of classes on this subject matter to law enforcement. He's extremely familiar with this type of time and advance records. Um, he's just got a wealth of knowledge, okay? Now he's talking about time in advance. He's saying time in advance records are maintained by cellular network providers that provide a time measurement. This time measurement refers to the amount of time it takes a radio signal to travel from a cell site to a mobile device and back to the cell site. Given the signal travels at a known constant, the speed of light, it is possible to use the measurement to determine the distance the mobile device is from a known cell site. With multiple cell site record time and advance data in short periods of time, it is possible to use trilaration to determine the location of a mobile device. The use of time and advance data in this manner is one of the most accurate ways for law enforcement to locate a mobile device. Given these records are available in a historical context, it is possible to conduct an analysis of timing advanced data to pinpoint historical locations of a mobile device at a given date and time. It is also possible to determine routes of travel, stagnation, and when a mobile device is powered on and off. As a result of its accuracy, requesting timing advanced data has become a standard practice for all law enforcement in the United States and is regularly requested through legal process relating to a criminal investigation. So he's saying that this is so useful, it's become a standard practice where if you have a criminal case, you're going to request the timing advance data on a cell phone. Okay, let's continue. In August of 2021, he's approached by FBI special agent to assist in analyzing a type of record set identified as AT&T Timing Advance Report. And it was the first time I was made aware of this type of data from AT&T. Upon request, I can provide the date, time, location, FBI agent I assisted with the record set. As of the year 2021, AT&T had not officially released a timing advance report to law enforcement. Therefore, the ZEC software program did not yet support AT&T Timing Advance Records. As a result of this interaction with the FBI, I obtained a copy the time in advance report from the special agent and forwarded to our software to write code within ZX system to support future uploads of this time in advance report format. The next day, I was informed by the special agent the AT&T time in advance report was not supposed to be released, viewed outside of the FBI, and that individual requested I return the report and not have any software developed to support the data they had shown to me. I did return the report, however, due to the interaction explained here, there's a paper trail documenting the facts of this interaction. I have firsthand knowledge that AT&T was providing the FBI with timing advance reports prior to August of 2021. So the prosecution saying they weren't, of course, is another lie. We have been lied to so much. It's so frustrating. That is another lie. The prosecution said that they were not providing these time advance records. And again, this is another lie now. But let's continue on. During my career, working with call detail records from every cellular provider in the United States, I have been involved with thousands of cases in which call detail records are obtained from these companies, leading the way in the establishment of best practices within this field of investigation. I wrote and provided custom search warrants for every provider and distributed them to thousands of law enforcement officers in the United States, assisting them in the legal process of obtaining the vast and ever-growing amount of data sets offered by cellular providers. I have worked with the AT&T Global Legal Demand Center, abbreviated GLDC, for over 15 years. I have firsthand knowledge that the AT&T GLDC is one way, not the only way, for law enforcement to obtain call detail records from AT&T. So it's not the only way, it's one way. Let's continue. This is good information. I have firsthand knowledge that there is another way to obtain call detail records from AT&T without going through GLDC. Over the course of many years, AT&T has had several different programs in partnership with federal law enforcement, primarily the FBI, that allow for call detail records to be disseminated to the FBI without going through the standard GLDC process. The first AT&T timing report I was presented and had a chance to review and become familiar with in August of 2021 was obtained from AT&T through one of these programs, not through GLDC. I have been involved in numerous investigations where AT&T call detail records were obtained through these AT&T programs outside of GLDC. I have firsthand knowledge and experience in working with individuals at AT&T associated with these other programs. What such individual is Boyd Jackson? Mr. Jackson is a program director at AT&T who manages many of the programs I am referencing. Mr. Jackson is the primary contact for the FBI when requesting records outside of the standard GLDC process. The state is correct in their claim that AT&T GLDC did not provide law enforcement with AT&T Timing Advance reports into May of 2023. As a matter of fact, in May of 2023, the working group known as GLDC had only began their storage of Timing Advance records. The first official release of AT&T Timing Advance data was not provided to law enforcement until June 15th, 2023 by GLDC. In 2022, the FBI obtained AT&T Timing Advance records from another source outside of GLDC. During this investigation, law enforcement obtained the following AT&T Timing Advance data. Two of the victims had AT&T phones. Law enforcement obtained AT&T timing data on both of their phones. Law enforcement developed an early investigative lead. In this case, that person had an AT&T phone at the time of the crime. Law enforcement obtained his AT&T timing advance data. So who are they referring to when they say they had a lead early on in the case? Okay. I don't know. It doesn't sound like Bryan Kohberger. But let's continue. Law enforcement also requested a tower dump consisting of AT&T, excuse me, timing advanced data. This request involved AT&T providing all of the connections between two Pacific cell sites in Moscow during a 2-hour period. The data produced was AT&T timing advanced data. In all, there were over 3,800 AT&T mobile phones identified in the timing advanced tower dump data. That's a lot of records, okay? The AT&T timing advance data was obtained by the FBI using an internal source at AT&T, Mr. Boyd Jackson, who is not associated with the GLDC working group. GLDC was not used to obtain this data. A forensic examination of the AT&T timing advance records in the state's possession show Mr. Jackson's association with the reports. So, what did they find out from all these records? Do they have any pictures? Did they take any video? You know, I would like to know. But let's continue. Let's go. This is a lot of talking, so excuse me. There is work product in the state's possession created by the FBI showing the AT&T timing advance data was not only obtained, but regularly referenced and used in the course of this investigation. Its existence is well known to the investigators and prosecutors. The state has provided a certificate of authenticity, a COA, to defense in relation to the timing advance records described above. The COA was created in April of 2024 and issued by the director of GLDC, Stephen Gordon. I have previously worked with and I am familiar with Mr. Gordon. The COA specifically states, I am qualified to authenticate the records attached hereto because I am familiar with how the records were created, managed, stored, and retrieved. I have personal knowledge that in the event Mr. Gordon was required to testify, he would clarify that prior to May of 2023, neither he nor the AT&T GLDC working group was involved with AT&T timing advance records. Additionally, there is forensic evidence contained within the records that indicate they were not produced by AT&T GLDC, nor were they produced in the year 2024. In reviewing this data, I contacted and communicated with Mr. Gordon to clarify the chain of custody related to these records. Mr. Gordon and and an AT&T legal representee informed me that Mr. Gordon would not be the individual to certify these records if required to do so, despite issuing the COA. In my review of this information, there is evidence to suggest the chain of custody involving these records and COA were produced well outside of AT&T's normal practice. There is missing information and data associated with this request. The prosecutor prior claims that AT&T Timing Advance data did not exist in 2022 further complicates this issue. It is my expert opinion that any testimony proffered on behalf of the FBI or AT&T on this matter would clearly reveal these issues. Okay, let's keep going. In my review of this investigation, I have read numerous emails sent and received by law enforcement pertaining to their investigation. One such email dated November 15th, 2022, so this was right after the murders, everybody, okay, was sent to prosecutor Ashley Jennings at her Latah County government email address. This email is from Moscow Detective Lawrence Maury. The email is informing Mrs. Jennings of Detective Maury's recent contact with FBI agent Balance. Special Agent Balance. Special Agent Balance informed Detective Maury that AT&T can provide timing advanced data and to make sure it is listed in the search warrant. Detective Maury is specifically asking Prosecutor Jennings to make sure the AT&T timing data is listed in the warrant prior to the report ever being distributed by the working group known as GLDC. Mrs. Jennings did respond to Detective Maury's email inquiring on the specific verbiage needed to obtain AT&T Timing Advance. This email is abundantly clear evidence that Mrs. Jennings was not only aware of the existence of AT&T Timing Advance in 2022, but also shows her intention to obtain it through legal process from AT&T. So how can you now say that those records didn't exist, but the FBI is actually telling you to request them right immediately after the murders? It is the lies for me, everybody. It's the lies. But let's continue. Let's continue on. My eyes are like watering up. In my review of this investigation, based on my training and experience, it is incredibly unusual that the defendant's AT&T Timing Advance records were not obtained by the FBI. The FBI demonstrated their ability to obtain AT&T Timing Advance in November of 2022 by obtaining AT&T Timing Advance records on over 3,800 mobile devices, none of them being the defendants. But if you went and got the records in a 2-hour time crunch, wouldn't Mr. Kohberger's be included in that group if he allegedly is the killer and was there at the house? Wouldn't his records be in that 3,800 mobile device group? Okay. When it comes to location data from AT&T, Timing Advance data can be some of the most accurate data available. Additionally, it contains connections to the network other than the typical voice, text, or data connections. This allows law enforcement to not only see more data, but more accurate data. Anytime a defendant's location are in question, a Timing Advance report would be asked for as a standard operating procedure. Moscow Police Department, by way of the FBI and with the knowledge of prosecutors, demonstrated their awareness of this standard procedure when they obtained AT&T Timing Advance data on over 3,800 mobile devices. Okay. When detectives and prosecutors requested and served two different search warrants to AT&T on the defendant's AT&T account, they requested the exact same timing advance data they previously did when they obtained timing advance data from AT&T on over 3,800 mobile devices. They also maintain the same process in utilizing the FBI to serve the legal demands on AT&T. There is no difference in the verbiage, legal process, or individuals that produced AT&T timing advance data on 3,800 mobile devices and the request for the defendant's AT&T timing advance data that allegedly yielded nothing. Wait a minute, we got to enlarge that again. I'm sorry. Oh, I can't make it no bigger. Okay. Let me read that again. Whew, just calm down. Additionally, on December 23rd, 2022, the FBI sent a communication directly to AT&T specifically detailing their request for the defendant's AT&T Timing Advance Records. There is no reason to believe AT&T would not respond to this request. It is my expert opinion AT&T Timing Advance data did exist for the defendant's AT&T mobile device in 2022, and it was requested from AT&T by the investigators involved in this case. The investigators previously demonstrated their ability to obtain AT&T Timing Advance data in 2022. Failure to produce the defendant's AT&T Timing Advance data is either a gross deviation from standard practice or intentionally withheld from release in discovery. This is in conclusion now. It is my expert opinion in reviewing all the evidence that has been disclosed by the state that AT&T Timing Advance data was available on the defendant's phone in 2022. There is overwhelming evidence showing the state obtaining and using AT&T Timing Advance data in the course of this investigation in 2022 on over 3,800 AT&T mobile devices other than the defendants. But if he was there, wouldn't he be in that 3,800? Doesn't that point to signs that he wasn't there in that 2-hour period? There is no doubt the author of this current motion, Prosecutor Ashley Jennings, knew or should have known AT&T Timing Advance data did exist in 2022. She was directly involved in the legal process obtaining it and was aware of work product created from it to further the investigation. The current motion is a deliberate misrepresentation to the court to further conceal false statements used to obtain probable cause against the defendant and conceal exculpatory evidence from discovery. I'm prepared to provide witness testimony and relevant exhibits that support all my opinions contained in this affidavit. It is my belief this evidence is beyond clear and convincing and will be supported by any competent expert in this field who reviews all the data. This is not a battle of experts. The evidence supporting the opinions in this affidavit is overwhelming. In my nearly 30 years of working with and for prosecutors all over the United States, I have never witnessed such a deliberate attempt by prosecutors to mislead the court on evidence in such plain sight. Anyone making such a claim would have to believe the court is incapable of reviewing physical evidence in possession of the state and defense. It rises to a level beyond a simple miscommunication or oversight and is clear and intentional misrepresentation in the hopes to conceal a much larger issue. I respectfully request the court give this affidavit the due attention it deserves and explore these issues further. Yeah. Okay. That was a long one. That was a long one. If they did a 2-hour window and they obtained cell phone time advance records for all the cell phones in that area, 3,800 AT&T cell phones. Wouldn't Bryan Kohberger be in that group? But he wasn't. He wasn't in the group, right? Then if later they ask for his records, are they still saying AT&T never provided them? It doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. The fact that they're saying these records didn't even exist, they're not able to get these records in 2022, is also another lie. It's not looking good. I don't know how much more has to happen. I'm so concerned that we've been spending so much time, this is years now, focusing not on the evidence. We need to go back to the beginning, start over. We need to find out, who does all of this other DNA belong to? The blood on the handrail, the blood inside the glove, the 3 mixture male DNA under Maddie Mogen's fingernail clippings. Who does all of this DNA belong to? I'm not going to ever say that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. I've always said, is there more likely? Is there other potential suspects? Are there more suspects? Multiple people involved, numerous killers. It's just so much, in my opinion, reasonable doubt. As I have said before, set this trial to the side, release Bryan Kohberger, and when you have everything in order, if it means arresting him again and prosecuting him again, you only have one shot. You have to make it count, and you have to do your best beyond a reasonable doubt. Is so much doubt with this particular case against Bryan Kohberger that it's very shocking, very alarming that this has gone this far. And as I did in one of my videos, I'm surprised that Bryan Kohberger's family has not filed suit. for just what happened with the IGG. And then some of the victims' families, they have messed this case up. Law enforcement and the prosecution, they have messed this case up. When are we going to see some work done that answers all of these reasonable doubt questions? Where was Zaina and Ethan after 8 p.m.? Where were they killed? What time were they killed? Why were they killed? What about the fight that night that Ethan allegedly was in? Was it true that Zaina talked to her dad about midnight and she said that her and Ethan were watching movies and eating pizza? Was that true? Because they couldn't have been at the party, at the fraternity party, if they were at home. What happened to Kaylee and Maddie once they emerged from the car? They were dropped off at 1122 King Road. How did Kaylee even come back? She didn't live at 1122 King Road now. Why was she at the house? Who brought her there? Some say lured her there, may ensure that she was back at the property that night. Because a lot of people are saying that this was a revenge. This was a killing for revenge. That this was a targeted attack. Were drugs flushed down the toilet? Were they told, we're going to get you, you're going to pay for this? Is this why so many people are quiet? And how is it possible for Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen to sit in a house to hear the murders, the vicious attacks against all of these victims, Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, Zaina, the screams, the dog Murphy barking, the crying, the yelling, the ruckus, the battle on the third floor, Zaina crying on the second floor, blood splattering everywhere? How was this all allowed to happen? And no one leaves the house. No one gets help. No one calls for an ambulance. No one calls 911. We need to start over from the beginning. Please let me know what you think. I really appreciate that you spent this time with me. Whew, that was a long one. I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel, for subscribing to my Facebook channel, for being friends with me on X and checking me out on X. I really, really appreciate all the people that watch me go over this case as well as all my other cases. Please remember, stay smart, stay safe, stay savvy, be well, all my friends. Bye, everybody.